Hey, welcome everyone. So glad you're all here on this morning. Thank you all for coming today. I think we got a great program for you. My name is Dr. Marion Schulte. I'm a commissioner on the Commission on Aging of Farmington Hills, which is sponsoring this talk. It's time to dream again with Chuck Gaidica is your speaker. I did have the awesome opportunity of working with, and a pleasure to work with, Chuck. He really practices what he preaches. He lived an adventurous life of dreaming big and doing big. After a decades-long career in TV, he felt the need to change his mission in life. He obtained a master's degree in ministry and leadership, and then he followed that with a certificate in second half significance from Pepperdine University. Chuck will speak about how entering the second half of our lives is not always easy, but there's still time to dream big dreams and reinvent ourselves. So with that, let's give a big warm welcome to Chuck Gaidica.
Well, thank you. Good morning.
Good morning.
How's everybody? Gosh, you're so much taller in person. Nice to see you. So thank you, Dr. Marion. I get to say doctor. She's now got her PhD. That deserves a round of applause, doesn't it? That's a trail, I'll tell you. I went back for my master's when I was 50. I got it when I was 54 because I was working full-time as well. So, at my pace, I'll get my PhD when I'm 90. So it's okay. I appreciate the idea that, we've got someone who actually does it, that gets out there and does it. So I'm here today to talk a little bit about my journey. I'm going to be happy to take questions when we're done. I got a request for a photograph when we're done. That's fine. You can take as many as you like. They're only $10. Take several. So we'll talk a little bit about our journeys. I'm learning a lot of things in my journey. I'm learning that I'm a baby boomer. Now, I notice we have varied ages here. I'm assuming we have some folks that are a little off and a little older than baby boomer. But how many boomers? How many of you know you're a baby boomer? Okay, let me give you the definition. Baby boomer. First of all, don't you dare call us seniors. That's the first thing. And I'm not kidding. To get the senior coffee at McDonald's, we don't mind that so much. But don't dare call us seniors. We don't want to hear it. Born between 1946 and 1964. That's a baby boomer. So I happen to know this because I'm in that space, right? So let me just give you some of the numbers because it becomes astounding if you're a little older than that group of people. But just baby boomers alone. 74 million of us in America. We have tens of trillions of dollars of inherited or saved wealth. That doesn't mean it's gone well for everybody. For about 40% of baby boomers, saving and having money saved for retirement, maybe it hasn't gone as well. For about 60%, they kind of have that money, but that doesn't mean everybody's a millionaire. That just means collectively that's how much is there. I remind my 5 children, all of whom are millennials, they'll say, man, I really got it all together. I'm a millennial. And I remind them, I say, yeah, that's cool. The only problem is I own everything. So it's just, we own everything. Good luck, 30-year-old. Good luck. The other thing that's very interesting, and this is a space that I understand because for some reason I feel like I'm led to work in the space. I seem to be an adventurer. If you're 65 plus right now, how many are in that range? Do you care to admit it? Look at that. Look at that. 65 plus in your lifetime. This isn't 50 plus. This isn't all the boomers. This is 65 plus. You have 2.4 trillion hours of free time. Now, here's what this is called now. Now there's a name. You know how we get names for everything? There's a name for this now. It's called time affluence. So forget the money part for a minute. You've got time. What are you going to do with it, right? So I remember not too long ago, I was talking to this financial planning guy. It was a telephone call, right? And it's a major company. And he said, okay, I've got this plan that we've put together for you. And I said, okay. And I just turned 59 and a half. I know there's a half involved because that's when I get to start taking retirement money and all that stuff, right? So I just, middle of February, 59 and a half. So he's talking to me. He says, okay, so have you got your plan? I said, yeah, I got it. He said, so we're going to go through your plan. So we go through this year and this year. And I had to plug in a couple of weddings. Don't really know yet, but I've got, and sure enough, we got a proposal 3 weeks ago. So check, I did a good job there. It's coming. And you know my job, just bring the checkbook. That's my job. So I'm going through all this, and he gets out to about 25 years out, to about age 84 and a half, and he says, okay, so we say goodbye to you, and your wife... You what? He said, well, you know, I'm just going by the actuarial tables. I said, yeah, but I want to be above average. I mean, So I think what happens for a lot of us, we can call it the second half. God willing, I've got another half. The math doesn't quite line up that I'm going to get another half. But however you look at it, your second, third, fourth quarter, your second half, whatever it is, what if God blesses us individually? What if I do get 25 more Christmas presents? The question for me was, what do I do with that? So I don't really think negatively. I don't really let my mortality influence me. It's kind of funny. I don't walk around thinking, ooh, I better get going because you never know. I mean, I think we all kind of have that undertone in our lives. But I thought to myself, even when I was enjoying television news as a career, I thought, well, what am I supposed to do when I grow up? I mean, is this it? You know, I dress in a suit and tie, put on makeup, and point at maps. Is this it? And don't get me wrong, it was a great career. You know, I mean, the check showed up. They paid me to talk for a living. What a country. But I thought, it really, is this all there is? And what if I'm going to have 25 good years, God willing, then what do I do with that? So for me, it became a journey. And I started feeling kind of this knock on the door in my 40s. And then I got to about 50, and as Marion mentioned, I went back for a master's. I studied. I lived in the Holy Land for a month, Israel and Jordan. I'll be going back in November for my third time. I'm now leading trips. So maybe I can work that into the fabric of my life, because I think for all of us, whether you're a boomer or beyond, or you're a little younger and you're looking at this, I think now Generation X is just before boomer. So I heard another new phrase, Boomer X. They're not quite a boomer, and they're just the older edge of Gen X, so we don't know what we are. So now I'm hearing, oh, I'm a Boomer X. But what are we going to do with this time affluence? What are we going to do to experience life while we can? What are we going to do to see what's been created for us in various places? I just got back from Washington, D.C. When I was there, about half of the cherry blossoms had bloomed. It doesn't get prettier than walking near the Jefferson Memorial or the Washington Monument, and there are the cherry blossoms blooming. And so while we all have certain things happening in our lives, health-related, time-related, money-related, I think for some reason I'm being moved in this world of helping people understand this time affluence. So maybe I'm supposed to go on trips. I don't know. I can only go on so many. But maybe I can encourage people to do that. And there's something else that's happening. Some of the people going on this trip in November who are going to Israel, it's a 10-day trip, and you can still go if you wanted, are saying to me, can I bring one of my kids or can I bring a grandchild with me? I think I'll say this collectively, it's a broad brush, right? Our generations are asking questions like, well, if I do have something saved, if I was blessed enough to have something saved, am I just going to leave it to everybody? Or would I rather spend it now and take them with me on a cruise so I can enjoy their faces while I'm here and they're here? And I think that's a shift. That's something that's going on now. Experiential travel, and also involving family members, even if you, me, you have to pay for it, because you're going to give it to them one way or another. So how do you want to do that? So I'm finding a shift of mentality of people saying things to me that I never would have imagined before. I've got a quote for you. Anatole France says, "To accomplish great things, we must not only act, but we must dream. Not only plan, but also believe." And I think sometimes in this second half, as Bob Buford, he wrote a book about 20 years ago called Halftime, Moving Your Life from Success to Significance. So that's the institute that I went to out of Pepperdine University. Are we prepared, and do we have a plan? And are you ever too old to believe that you can change your life, or are you ever too old to plan? I would argue you're not. I'm not. I don't think about it that way. I don't have time to think about what I can't do. Because there's a lot of stuff I can't do anymore, right? I can't jog. My left knee is bad. But I can still go to Israel, walk around for 10 days, and take people on this tour that's just incredible. So for me, I just have to understand I can rewire, not retire. I can recalibrate my life. So I encourage you that we can all do this. And so I think it's time for us to dream big dreams. And whether the financial planner is right, if I'm below average, well, I guess time is more limited. If I'm above average, well, then I've got a lot more time to think about this. What am I going to do with all that time? And for most Americans today, it's interesting. They're not just saying, well, they may say it, but they don't do it. I'm going to move to Florida and just play golf the rest of my life. For 25 years? I mean, really? Now, I know there are some avid golfers, right? I bet some in here, but 25 years, that's every day, and then go to some little club and talk about it every day. And so I think we're now all waking up to the fact that going into the second half is not what it used to be. And certainly for the baby boomers among us who raised our hands. When I say, don't you dare call us seniors, I'm not joking. I was speaking up at there's a center up in Rochester, beautiful center for seniors. It's called OPC, Older Persons Commission. They call it OPC for a reason. And they asked me one time, kind of cordially, I'm not a consultant to them. They said, would you change anything up here about what we do, it's beautiful, state of the art, swimming pool, everything. I said, well, you may have to change your name. Because we, baby boomers, don't want to hear this idea. I'm not an older person. I still think I'm 40 in my head, really. The average, now you think about this in your own life. The average American who would be, quote unquote, a senior, let's just say 60 plus, on average, thinks they're 15 years younger in their head. I mean, don't you relate to that? Easy, right? Easy. I'm still thinking like, man, I can do that. I'm like, oh, I can't do that anymore, But, easy, I'm thinking I'm 40 in my head, 20 years. I just shave right off, like no problem. So here we go through this stage of life, halftime. What does it mean? I got a certificate in second half significance. That's a really cool thing. There are only 1,100 people on the planet that have that certificate, but the irony is that I'm still trying to figure out my second half. But I have a certificate, so I'm able to help, or maybe I can encourage, because I'm not a guru. I can't tell you exactly what to do, although a lot of us tend to want to just give me 3 things, 2 things. Just give me one thing I should do, Chuck, and I would just do it. But I think it's all different based on where we are in our lives. So part of my journey has been through where you recognize me, television, news, and radio. Part of it has been an internal journey and an external journey. And eventually those 2 things started to line up. And when they lined up, I realized that I needed to make change in my life. I got to Detroit in 1982. I was in Little Rock, Arkansas, and I was interviewing for various jobs. I had talked to the folks at the Weather Channel before it was even on cable, and they said to me, how would you like to work in Atlanta doing weather 24 hours a day? I said, I am a weather guy. I don't think I want to watch weather 24 hours a day. But it was a great opportunity. I took a pass, and everything worked out great. I interviewed in Nashville, interviewed in Cleveland. I went to the sister station of Channel 2. Here, Channel 2 in those days was a CBS station. So I'm in Cleveland, I interview, and I fly home and I get a call, and they said, well, we've got good news and bad news. I said, oh, what's that mean? They said, well, the bad news is you don't get the job in Cleveland. Oh, that's too bad. They said, but the good news is all the management here in Cleveland is being transferred to Detroit. And when they get to Detroit to this Channel 2 station, it's a bigger market, by the way, so you'll probably like it there, they're going to fire everybody. And the first guy they're going to fire is this guy named Sonny Elliott. Now, I didn't know Sonny Elliott. I mean, it's not I didn't make him get fired, but that's how I got to Detroit. So they said, this guy's kind of a legend here in Detroit, and so do you have any problem with that? And I'm 23. I said, what's the problem? I mean, in my head, I'm thinking, even if I'm in Detroit for 2 years, no problem. That was almost 40 years ago. So I got to Detroit in 1982. I spent 5 years at Channel 2. Career was going great. I'm working, for 2 years. I'm the main substitute on the CBS Morning News, flying to New York, doing the weather. Then I thought I was going home to Chicago. I had a plan. Plans were different. Channel 4 called and said, how would you like to come over by our station downtown? I said, no, I think I'm going to Chicago. I've talked to them, and it's CBS, it's the network. I think I'm gone. They said, no, you're not. So I talked to them. That was 1987. They were right. They actually made an offer, as Corleone would say in The Godfather, that I couldn't refuse. So I moved over to Channel 4, and I was there for 27 years full-time, a couple of years part-time, and I'm still affiliated. If they want me to come back and do the Thanksgiving Day Parade, I will. I'm sort of like a bad case of the flu. I show up every once in a while. And if I go back to this year's parade, I think I've been part of the Thanksgiving Day Parade for about 30 years. So if you think about it, that's me, Captain Underpants, and Chilly Willy. It's So in this process, I have a great career. And yet, in my 40s, I start getting a knock. And I'm trying to figure out, what is that? It's not midlife crisis. It's not that I need a Corvette, although I've had one. They're nice. I thought, what's going on? Why am I'm at the top of my game? And so I come to realize that I was asking this question in many different ways. What am I supposed to do when I grow up? So I get to about 50 and I realize maybe I'm supposed to be in service to other people. That seems to make sense. I get the master's by age 54. I then go to halftime, my mid-50s. And so for a significant part of my early to mid-50s, I'm now recalibrating life. I walked into the TV station. I said, I'm leaving. They're like, what? I said, yeah, I know it's a little early for most people to just walk off the plank, but I really feel if I don't leave and put a line in the sand, it's just going to be too easy to stay. So after a while of kicking and screaming, we both collectively understood what I meant. I gave them a year's notice, so I tried to do it the right way, and so I left. And so while I miss my buddies, some of them have left now as well, I don't really miss the driving 4 times a day in and out of Detroit and working nights. My wife always thought, I just go away at night. She didn't know. And then I did radio from my house, But I was home every night for dinner, as long as there, weren't tornadoes or snowstorms. So in these seasons, I've realized maybe something, because we have people in here that are certainly wiser than me. Oftentimes, we get whispers and nudges in our lives, and we don't take enough time to sit down and listen to them. Right? I get that from my wife sometimes. Like, I know the voice of God comes through my wife. It just takes me 3 weeks to figure it out. And then when I do, I'll say, you were right. We'll be married 37 years in July, so, yeah. That's over 200 in doggy years, so it's... So I discovered that if I didn't start tuning in, this is like the old days of Ernie Harwell. Do you remember driving? You'd be driving and you'd have JR on for a baseball game, and JR goes all over the country, but you'd be far enough away where there'd be some garble, and then as you get closer, it feels like you're able to turn the volume up and you hear that familiar voice and you feel like you're getting closer to home. And that's kind of what I felt in my 50s. I kept thinking, okay, I'm taking time to listen to these whispers and then getting these nudges that I'm supposed to do something. Maybe I'm supposed to sit for a minute, listen, and maybe I should act. So for me, that's what it turned into. So I made a move in my life, and I can tell you that these whispers are real. The nudges are real. The problem is, do we have the fortitude? Do we have the guts to respond? Because it's oftentimes confusing. I know I saw my kids when they found out I was going to leave my job, because that's all they knew their entire lives, that Dad wore a tie and talked for a living. They would walk up to Susan. I'd see them in the kitchen, like, what's wrong with Dad? Susan would ask it in a different way, more polite way, like, are you crazy? Like, Riley still got to go to college. And by the way, may I just say this? I know you're applauding for a few certain things, but if you could applaud for what I'm about to tell you, this will make my week. My daughter Riley, my 5th of 5, graduates next month. This will end 18 consecutive years of paying for college. I have you, yeah. I said to my wife, you know what, maybe time for a new Corvette. That's So I know that a lot of baby boomers and beyond are still searching. You may be retired, you may have been retired for a while, and yet you're getting knocks on the door. I talk to now financial planning groups. I don't know why. I'm getting calls to speak to the planners as well as their clients. I've got 2 of those things in May and June I'm speaking. And they're starting to see some new things as well. Seniors, baby boomers are coming to them and saying, you know that financial plan you drew up? And I told you I didn't have any major expenses, we don't have to worry about I'm going to need to borrow some significant money out of my retirement because I want to start a new business. Really? That's a new trend. So I looked it up. Anybody can be a Google doctor. So I looked it up. And sure enough, overwhelmingly, people who are retired are saying, well, the way I'm going to reinvent, I'm going to do it myself because I'm tired of working for somebody else. So they're borrowing money, whether it's a franchise or something else. That's a new shift. People in America who have retired typically did not go in and take out a giant chunk of money to go start a new business. It didn't seem like the thing to do. But we're not the same. We're not wired the same. I just looked at a picture, a photograph. My late uncle passed away. He lived upstairs, 2-flat frame building in Chicago, where I grew up, inner city. He died at age 39. And I was 10 years old, so it was devastating for me, 3 weeks before Christmas. But I go back and I look at pictures every once in a while. And I looked at a photograph of him and I thought, 39. Do you ever look at photographs of your family and you think, they sure looked a lot older back then? So it isn't just that our minds are recalibrated to thinking we're 15 or 20 years older. For some reason, I'm looking at you now. You all look 20. I don't know. Hang on. Oh, that's all right. My wife did that to me. Can I just tell you this? Susan is her name, by the way. She sends her regards. So this is not a joke. We're in the kitchen. And she doesn't really need reading glasses, so I knew it wasn't what she was saying and how she said it, but it was the funniest thing ever. She had her glasses off. And I know she doesn't need them to see close. We're a good team. I need to see them to read. She needs to see far. So we're good. So she's standing right next to me, and she does one of those wifey things where she looks at me, I'm right here, puts her hands on my face. She goes, "You are so handsome." And I said, "Well, isn't that nice?" She said, "Let me get my glasses. I'm blind as a bat without them." Grading on a curve. The book Halftime, Moving Your Life from Success to Significance, while it has a faith component to it, you can get the book to this day, there's a word that was taken off by the publisher. They called Bob Buford and they said, the original name for the book was Halftime, Moving Your Life from Success to Significance to Surrender. And they said to Bob, you need to take that word surrender off. And he said, why? I don't want to do that. They said, no, this isn't a thing about your faith. It's just that as Americans, we don't like that word surrender. So take it off. It'll never sell. Nobody wants to give up and wave a white flag, So he took it off. But I think even if you take that word surrender out of a faith context, I think it's true. I think as all of us go into this new recalibration, and for me, I may be reinventing every 2 years or so. It just seems like that's the path I'm on. But the reality is that I think oftentimes we hang on to stuff we're unwilling to surrender. We need to hang on to the title we had when we were running an office. We need to hang on to that job. We need to hang on to the fact that, I don't know what it is, but to this day, I'm not on TV every day. I go through a McDonald's drive-through. They see me. They know, hey, Chuck, hey, weather guy. And then if it gets out of hand, like, can you sign this napkin? I know the fries are missing. They've messed up something. So I just shut off the car and go, okay, I'll sign your thing, but check the bag, make sure, But I had to wrestle with this myself. I will honest to God, I do not live to be recognized. It's part of the deal where I go now, right? Forever and ever, wherever I go, people go, hey, Chuck, I can go to Naples, Florida. It's little Detroit. Hey, Chuck, hi, Chuck, hi, Chuck, hi, Chuck. So I don't live for that, though. It's kind of nice when I go somewhere and they say, well, forgive me, I don't know who you are. It's like, that's really great. That's awesome. So, yeah, thank you. So the reality is that sometimes we hang on, and I thought to myself, am I hanging on to this? Does it hurt? No, it's not an ego thing. It's the way it's been for so long. And I think sometimes we're unwilling to let go of what we used to be because somehow it helped create our identity. So if I have any advice for you, if it matters, is that I'm learning that there are as many things that we have to give up as the new things we have to allow room to come into our lives. Michael Horton says something that's really interesting. He talks about this thing about significance. Bob Buford puts it in a little different way. Buford explains it in the book, Halftime, and he says, when we search for significance, or you may call it happiness, right? You want to find purpose. You're looking for this in your life. Making something of ourselves. Maybe again, right? We're going to reinvent and make something of ourselves, or making a difference in the world. How many of us relate to that, right? I do. It's what I want to do. I want to make a difference. Buford cautions, he says, be careful, because sometimes what matters most, the goal of making a difference, becomes an idol. And we start hanging on to that idol much more than we are actually helping people. And Michael Horton, another author, says, when we fail in that pursuit of either reinventing or making the world better, some big thing we thought we could do, and we kind of fail at it for whatever reason, he said we can often become bitterly unhappy. And I've seen a lot of people, we used to call them grumpy old men. But I think it's true, right? Can you relate to this, that there are some people you see who thought they left, they retired well, and they go in search of the next thing in life, and maybe they set their sights on the wrong thing, or they allowed it to become an idol, and when they hang on to that, they're building it up for the wrong reasons. They're maybe not really there to serve, they're there to be recognized as the server. And when it kind of fails, or they don't get the recognition they want, or maybe they even deserve, they get a bit unhappy. I think that's a good caution for all of us. I know it's a good caution for me. So if you're always going to go into the second half looking for impact or a legacy or success or significance, while the name of the book on the front of the cover, Success to Significance. Success to Significance. It sounds great. It really does alliterate well. I think the caution is we've all got to be careful that we may not care for the people who matter most in our lives if we're always concentrating on creating a big thing that is successful. So for me, as I was going through life, 40s and 50s, I recognized this as I left television news as well. I started using a lot of I messages. I sounded like Lou Holtz, football coach. I can change that. I can do it. I sound like Tony Robbins, the guy that makes people walk on hot coals, right? I don't know why somebody would pay $1,000 to get fired up to go walk on hot coals, but they do. But you've got to be careful with I messages as well, because for me, what I discovered was I was sounding like a football coach. I can do it. I can do it. And I came to realize that the world is a lot bigger than I. I can't do it alone. And so I've had to recalibrate in that regard as well. Maybe, like I've done for the past couple of days, one daughter flies to the Grand Canyon and Route 66 because she's taking pictures. Our other kids are busy. We're watching grandkids now. We've got our third one due in September. So I've got a 2.5-year-old named Lucy and a 7-year-old named Adam, and they're over at the house, and I'm helping my wife, and they're running around, and we're both looking at each other like, how do we do 5? I don't understand. Let's get out the paintbrushes. Let's do this. Let's do that. And they're like, whoa, holy moly. And we're both sitting at the end of the day like, why are you tired? I don't know. But maybe what we're supposed to do, the most important thing in our life, is to pour into our own children, pour into our grandchildren. That can include taking them on a trip. You know what I'm saying? That may be the most important thing we can do, and that's okay. Bill Hybels is a guy who started a church, but he's a prolific author. And he wrote a book about whispers and nudges, and I relate to the title. It's called The Power of a Whisper, Hearing God and Having the Guts to Respond. What if you hear a whisper? What if you get a nudge to leave the best job you've ever had in your life? So was it crazy for me to do? No. I used to say when Susan and the kids were asking, what's wrong with Dad? I started saying something that I think was very lethargic. I said, I'm having the most fun being confused I've ever had. And that became something they would repeat to people. Somebody would say to them, what do you mean your dad's leaving TV news? Oh, he's having the most fun being confused. So not everybody can have fun being confused. But if you adopt that attitude in this second half journey, I'm telling you, it takes the edge off. Because I know a lot of us go through this, and it comes and goes in little waves, right? You start to think, well, everything's fine, and I'm just kind of coasting, and then you get this wave like, what am I supposed to do for 20 more years? So I know it comes back around every once in a while. And if you've already responded to one of these whispers and nudges, I encourage you. I think that's great. But I also encourage you to think that we are in a time in the world where reinvention is okay, and if there were ever a time to reinvent, you can do it now. So here I am, part of traditional television and radio for almost 4 decades. I'm talking to somebody, I'm encouraging this person yesterday on the phone, almost as if I'm a coach. And I do coach people every once in a while. And so I'm talking to her on the phone, and she said, you know, I don't know that I did this at the right time. I should have done what I've done a long time ago, leaving what I've done and making this change. She's 53. I said, well, you weren't ready. It wasn't your time. And I said, now look at what you're doing. For me, 5 years ago, to do a podcast would mean I'd have to go to a studio, I'd have to sit down with professionals, somebody would have to run a board, I'd have to have a professional mic, and they'd have to help me do a podcast. Do you know how she does a podcast now? She opens up an app on her smartphone and sets it in her kitchen and talks to the phone. It records the podcast, and by the way, if she wants a guest, she gives them her phone number. She sees it ring, she brings them into the conversation, she wears earbuds, and she's doing a show, if you will, a podcast through her phone. As soon as she's done, she hits end. If she wants to edit it, she edits it. She posts it, and it goes to iTunes and another place in an instant, for free. 5 years ago, couldn't have done it. I said, your time is now. The stuff you're doing is now. So don't be afraid to say, I'm on a journey and it may take a minute. And if you're like me, I'm type A, right? I need to get stuff done now. Marion knows that. That can be a frustration, right? That can be a problem, for me anyway. Let's get it done. Show me what you want. I'll show you 6 ways to get it done. Pick one. I'll do it. Anybody relate to that idea? So when you're doing it that way, you can get frustrated because sometimes God, other people in your life, they don't work that fast. So you've got to be patient. And while I understand that's a virtue, I don't have as much of it as I'd like. So I continue to work on it, you know. I go to the Holy Land. I see these ancient places. I'm inspired. And now I'm inspired to say to other people, come on an adventure with me. I've lived an ordinary life, but I got into an extraordinary opportunity of a business. Because I was a TV personality, not because I was so good at it, I got offers to go on adventures. And I look back now, you know how it's easy to look back at history when the pages are written? So I go back and I look at these pages and I think, I guess I am a bit of an adventurer. I've flown through a hurricane, through the eye 9 times. I've chased tornadoes. Caught one. That was pretty cool. Get a call. How would you like to fly with the United States Blue Angels at Willow Run? Really? Nobody else would go in the newsroom. Nobody else would go. You know what that's like to fly with the U.S. Navy Blue Angels? There's only one plane that has 2 seats. That would be like my phone rang right now and I would see White House and I would answer it and it would be the President of the United States saying, you know, I've got a little time tomorrow. Would you like me to give you a tour myself? That's what it's like to fly with the Blue Angels. So I say yes. 50 feet above the ground to 22,000 feet in about 30 seconds. Go upside down in a barrel loop. Fly sideways. He let me fly it, right? He let me take the stick, so I'm flying. And at the time, I'm a private pilot, but I've never flown an I've never flown a F-16 jet, fighter jet, so I got the stick. He said, why don't you roll the airplane? So I hit the stick, and we're rolling around. And as we come around, I went a little too far, so I tapped the stick, and we leveled out. He said, that's pretty good for a civilian. I said, I've got 5 kids. I know how these video games work. I know how. I get a call. I mean, this stuff just happened. I get a call. How would you like to go to the Amazon rainforest in the jungle with Dr. Bob Ballard, the guy who discovered the Titanic? What? And live there for 10 days where no other person has been. What? Okay, so I go to the rainforest in Peru. We followed a local kid who was going with Bob Ballard. I'm hanging out with Bob Ballard. I get a call 2 years later. Hey, you want to go with Bob again up to the top of Mount Kilauea for 10 days, an expedition? Yeah. Oh, I look back at all this stuff, you know, and every time I know my family was afraid. I know my wife had some fear. 5 kids at home. I had a lot of life insurance, so that took the edge off. But I thought, you know, what am I doing? And I realize that I have a sense of adventure. So now if I'm going to take people on a sense of adventure, if I can inspire people, awesome. But the scariest things in life, in those adventures, were not the actual adventures. And that's encouraging to me, and I hope it can encourage you. The scariest part of all those trips had nothing to do with the actual adventure. The actual adventure was awesome. The scary parts were always something you never imagined. In the case of flying through a hurricane, there were only 2 people that came on board the hurricane short of the crew and all the meteorologists that are going to fly over the Atlantic Ocean through the eye of Hurricane Diana. So I get on with my photographer. The pilot has to give a briefing. If you were to fly with me as a private pilot, I'd have to give you a briefing. You know, in case we land hard or something happens, you open the doors here, don't run that way, there's a propeller, run this way. You know, I give you a briefing, how to get out, what to do. So we have to get a briefing. Pilot says, okay, we're going out over the Atlantic off the coast of the Carolinas. The winds are 140 miles an hour in gusts, 127 sustained. We're flying in at 5,000 feet. We'll go through the eye 9 times. Half the time it's in the dark and half the time it'll be in the daylight. There'll be a little bouncing, there'll be some lightning. Everything should be fine. But just in case, we have to ditch the plane in the Atlantic Ocean. There are 50-foot waves, just so you know, and underneath every other seat is a yellow life raft. So if we go down, I want you to swim for one of these yellow life rafts. I want you to grab it, pull this little ripcord. It will inflate into a little teepee, unzip it, flop yourself in, and zip it back up. Any questions? I didn't really want to be a smart aleck, but I raised my hand. I said, so let me ask you, if we crash into the Atlantic Ocean in 50-foot waves and 140-mile-an-hour winds, we're all going to come out in little yellow life rafts? He went, oh no, we're all going to die. But I have to let you know where they are. It's part of the briefing, you know. That was the scariest part of the trip. Flying through 9 times, not scary. I'm drinking Diet Cokes, having sandwiches with the guys, kind of bouncing around. It wasn't bad. Flying with the Blue Angels. The trip, amazing. I learned I now know I can kind of black out. I saw it coming, but I got out of it. I was fine. I didn't puke in the guy's plane, even better. But the scary part is walking up to the beginning. This guy walks out. He's 26 years old. Top Gun, like the movie. Have you seen it? Everybody around him snaps to attention to this young man. He gets in the front seat. I'm getting in the back seat. He's got an assistant who gets me in my seat. I strap on a triple-point harness like NASCAR, lock it into place. And he reaches into my cockpit area, and he grabs this big red handle, and I can hear it clicking, and he locks it into place. He said, I've just armed your chair. These are not words you want to hear in regular life. I said, you've armed it with what? He said, well, the equivalent of 2 sticks of dynamite. So in case the pilot passes out, also you don't want to hear this, if the pilot were to pass out and you have to eject, he'll get rid of the canopy, and if somehow he can't, you see that little red button, don't push it. I said, I'm not pushing anything. He said, if you're up there and you can't get out, you push that button, it'll blow the canopy, it will ignite your chair. It's another phrase you don't really use much. And it will blow you out of the airplane. But don't worry, there's a parachute on the back of your seat that automatically deploys. I said, well, where will I come down? He said, oh, I don't know. But I have to tell you that it's all there. And I'm like, what in the world? You know, but then the trip was fine. So what I learned by all of these adventures, I guess I'm an adventurer, right? And I guess I love cruises, and we just did some of that. So it's not all just, you know, climbing mountains and stuff. I just got off of, 2 months ago, I went on a 70s music cruise. It's called the 70s Rock and Romance Cruise. Because when you look at me, you think romantic, don't you? My daughter, 26-year-old, works for a company in Fairfax, D.C. They have a 50s music cruise, a 60s cruise, a 70s cruise, a Soul Train cruise, a disco cruise, and 2 country cruises. The fastest growing area of travel in America, themed cruises. So I'll give you names I know you will recognize of people. She liaisons with the talent, so she helps get them on and off the ship. So I know you will recognize names like the Four Tops, the Spinners, Frankie Valli, the Beach Boys. Last year on my 70s ship, so if you're a little older, I'm not sure how much you will recognize these groups, but you probably will know the names. On the ship, we are listening to 35 concerts in 5 days in the Caribbean. On the ship were ELO, Little River Band, Christopher Cross, Peter Frampton, America, Ambrosia Orleans, Firefall, Chuck Negron of Three Dog Night, and Barry Williams, Greg Brady, is walking around the ship because he's our host. It's like we went back to the 70s. And they have fun dress-up nights. People are walking around with bell-bottoms. It was like a prom. And I know that, there was nothing untoward that I saw. I mean, it wasn't a big drunk party or something. It wasn't a booze cruise. I'm sure somebody had too much to drink, but I didn't see them. So it's just a fun thing, and it's the fastest growing. So in the 50s genre, if you like 50s music, you can go. If you like 60s, you can go. So next year, I think on the 60s, Beach Boys are back. Next year for us, it was Journey, Little River Band. I don't know if we're going again, but it's just an incredible experience because all of these people, they don't like to use the word seniors. They're now heritage bands. That's what I would call myself. And they're making big money because guess who's all coming? All the people that have the tens of trillions of dollars of wealth and have the time to go. I'm on a ship last year, and I'm standing next to this gentleman. You know how you get a card? Have you been on a ship? You get a card, and it says, you go to early or late dinner, and then you'd go to early or late show, depending on what that means. So you get a gold card or a silver card. I guess it's supposed to be, are you a silver citizen or golden oldie, So you get a card. I'm standing next to this man. I'm getting my Diet Coke, and I said, so you've got like 24 cards around your neck. Like, how many cruises have you been on? He said, oh, man, my wife and I figured it out. We lived up in Pittsburgh, and we made a pact with each other. We're going to retire, so we moved to Fort Lauderdale. I said, wow, that's interesting. He said, yeah, and we decided that we would take my Social Security check. I've got a pension. She's got a Social Security check. We're going to take my entire check, and after taxes, that entire amount of money we blow every year on travel. That's our mission for the rest of our lives. I thought, well, there's a plan. The guy had the guts to respond. He created a plan. He said, but see, it's better. We moved to Fort Lauderdale. So now I don't live in Pittsburgh. So if I get an email that says, can you be on a cruise ship on Friday? And I didn't get the email till Wednesday. He said, I don't have to pay for airfare. That's crazy. He said, we can get on some of the cheapest cruises around on some of the best ships because we can react immediately. We don't have a pet on purpose. The kids all live somewhere else. He said, so we've been on a ship. He said, as a matter of fact, the ship we're talking on, he said, we were on the same ship last week. They sent an email. They said, how about for $400 a piece? Do you want to cruise for another week? He said, like, we're in. Where are you going to go? $400 in a week. You've got lodging, shows, and all your meals. It's crazy. So that's this guy's plan, and I had to admire it. Is it my plan? I don't know. Is it your plan? Maybe you're inspired. If you're going, call, because I'll go with you. So while that all sounds kind of cool, I know that all of us tend to look for other things in our life. I've got a friend who's really into gardening, should be a master gardener. I've got a friend at church who responds to national disasters, works through the Billy Graham Ministries. Hurricane hits Houston, shooting happens in Nevada, Vegas. He'll get on a plane at his own expense. He considers that part of his mission in his second half. He flies to these places as a trained chaplain, and all he does is walk around and ask people, how can I help you? That's all he does. He's wearing a t-shirt, how can I help you? They immediately respond to disasters of various kinds. And I thought, isn't that a cool thing to think? That you have felt that that is your mission in your second half. And by the way, remember, it's costing him money. He's not making money at it. That's his mission. Somebody else I met just spoke to a group in Livingston County. This woman is well into her 70s. She runs, helped to create and runs Meals on Wheels for Livingston and Western Oakland County. An inspiration to everybody. She's serving 1,500 meals a day out of a kitchen. Are you kidding? And then they find out what the need is. They found out some of the seniors were so poor that they're feeding halves of their sandwiches to their dogs or cats. So now they do Meals on Wheels for dogs and cats. They take, if you check off, my dog needs food, well, they don't want you giving your food to your dog, so they send a bag of dog food once a week. I mean, it's just brilliant. But here she is in her late 70s, reinventing her life and now running an organization. Is she making big money at it? I don't even know if she makes money at it. Is that the point? No. Is she super wealthy? No. That's her thing. What a great idea to find a purpose like that where you're helping other people. So one of the things that I'm also recognizing, because I look at a lot of research, is the fact that we've got to be careful. All of us, you probably have gotten to this point already. Loneliness is going to be one of the biggest things that hits all of us as we get older. I have 5,000 Facebook friends. I'm limited at 5,000. Like when 2 drop off, I can only add 2 more. I've got 1,500 waiting to become my friend. Sorry if you are. I have almost 5,000 LinkedIn connections. Do you think if I got a flat tire here today, 10,000 people would come racing up to help me change my tire? No. Forgive me if you are. You're AAA, right there, my real friend. If you're a friend, I'm not trying to castigate you. I'm just saying that those aren't real friendships, right? That's kind of friendship, but it's not real friendship. Number one problem we're going to see in America is loneliness. So what can happen at this center? What can happen in your life? What can happen when you recraft your second half? Think about how you're finding people with like interests, people who don't have like interests who can encourage you and help you move into this next season. And I also want to encourage you that while there are so many people out there selling books, creating programs, walking on hot coals, doing something radical, they're selling stuff, CDs, download this, buy my book. All of that's great. But at the end of the day, sometimes the quieter, softer stuff, family, taking care of parents, that's happening too, right? In my family's life, we haven't had our kids bounce back for long, maybe right out of college, and then they're off. But I've now got aging parents. My wife, sadly, has lost both of hers. Well, that's a new thing. For some of you, I know you either have gone through this or you are going through it now. You're in the sandwich generation. Kids come back, parents get older, and you thought all those plans you had to go on the rock and romance cruise, you have to postpone them. So I think pouring into some of our family members becomes something that's very important, because at the end of the day, what's more important? And so it doesn't all have to be this stuff that gets a lot of attention. So I encourage you, think about that elderly neighbor. Think about linking up to some organization here in Farmington Hills. Think about Meals on Wheels. How can you serve other people? That can be part of your second half story as well. When I was at a church in Novi, I helped create a baby boomer conference. We had people from 35 to in their 70s. The 35-year-old was a firefighter. He said to me, I really want to get that book on your second half. I said, man, you're a little early. He said, yeah, but the problem is I started when I was 20. I've been carrying all this heavy equipment, 100 pounds of equipment and all these fire hoses up and down ladders my entire professional life. He said, my knees and my back, they're going out. I've got to reinvent myself. So this could be for your children are also going to go through something, and you can say, I know what it is. You're having the most fun being confused, right? Because it may affect them. When you have a mom or a dad, think of the numbers. We have an increasing number of people among us who are living well into their 80s, 90s, and, to 100. Having people that are aged, that's us. Isn't that cool? I mean, we'll be able to have a race down the hall someday. It's going to take a while, but we'll all be able to be racing. So while that's happening, is there ever an age in your mind right now as you sit in this room where you think, I can't do something? I don't think that way. And I would just wonder, is there an age that you get to where you really just go, no, I can't? I guess there is, but I just don't relate to it. I've got a friend who's the same age as my dad. He's 84. I said to him, how you doing today? His name is Chuck. It's a great name, by the way. I said, Chuck, how you doing? He said, well, I don't know. I've never been this age. I don't know what to expect. He's like Shecky Green. He brings out that line, like every once in a while. So I really think we need to be encouraged. You need to be encouraged. You are living at a time right now where there is nothing that is impossible. There is no way that you can't reinvent your life. There is no way that you can't also just bloom where you're planted. Just do good right where you are, because sometimes that's the most important thing to do. And if you want to reinvent, you want to start doing a podcast because you've always wanted to be in radio or TV, well, too late. My job is taken. But you can do it on your phone. And people are inventing new ways to get around. So here's a good example. Technology, what's old is new. My parents don't have smartphones. My dad won't get a smartphone. He said, it's too smart for me. I don't get it. He wants a flip phone, right? So he can't download the app. He can't drive right now. So I said, Dad, we discovered a new service. It's called Go Grandparent. Have you heard of it? No. Yeah, Go Grandparent. What do? They use Uber and Lyft. So what can you do? You can pick up your phone and call them. because you can't call Uber or Lyft. You go to GoGo Grandparent, you register your credit card, and when you need a car, you call them. And they go online, and they get Uber or Lyft. And they'll say to you, there's a guy named Chuck. He's pulling up in a red car. He'll be there in 3 minutes. Exact stuff that Uber and Lyft does. And they stay on the phone with you because oftentimes seniors get a little upset. You know, they're a little concerned about who's picking them up. The car pulls up, takes them on their way. As a kid, guess what? I get copied on an email alert right away. Your parents were just picked up at their home, and they're headed to the Henry Ford Health Center in Sterling Heights. Awesome. I now know where they're going. I'm peeking in on their lives. This is so good. Then I know when they get the next car to pick them up and bring them home. And if for any reason my dad gets concerned in the middle of a ride, he can pick up the phone and call GoGo Grandparent and say, hey, you know what? I just wanted to talk to you, and whatever you want to do. Is there a charge for it? A little bit of a surcharge. Is it worth its weight in gold to me as a kid? Absolutely. What else have they done? Well, how about Instacart? Anybody using that? Instacart, log on, instacart.com. I don't own stock. I have no idea who owns it. They will go shop for you. CVS, Kroger, in my parents' neighborhood in Warren, they can get somebody to shop for them at Kroger, Costco, CVS, PetSmart, Meijer, right? If your order is over $35, it costs $5.99 to shop for you and deliver it to your door. If it's over 35 bucks. If it's under, they charge you $9.99. So there's a bit of a penalty because, and do they have everything? No. But if there were a snowstorm or you, God forbid, something happened, you got surgery on your leg, your knee, and you've got 2 weeks, you need somebody to shop, can you get the staples? Absolutely. Put it all together. So now, my parents, with our help, we shop. Instacart shows up tomorrow at 2 p.m. Ding dong, there's the doorbell, $5.99. Where are you going to find somebody in this room who will shop for you for $5.99 and deliver it to your house? Brilliant. So there's all kinds of stuff happening, and I think we need to take advantage of those things as we move through life. So let me just finish up. One thing that I saw in my lifetime, especially with this Boomer Conference, was I would have people walk up to me and say, you know that book you've mentioned a few times, Halftime, Moving Your Life from Success to Significance. I love the title, but Chuck, I've never been successful, and I don't understand being significant. I don't get it. And it dawned on me. A lot of us don't lead high-profile jobs where people know who we are. You may not make big money like a football player or something. And so what is success and what is significance? And there's a pastor out of New York City, you may have heard of him, Tim Keller. Tim writes a lot of books, and I read a lot of his stuff, and he says, I want to encourage you. You've heard the phrase, our daily bread, right? It can have faith meaning, and it can also mean that we need to have sustenance. So it doesn't matter if it's manna or matzah or, pita bread, doesn't matter. The reality is that to get our daily bread, to get Instacart to shop for us, Keller points out in his book, every single person has a role in life. The farmer who grows the wheat, thrashes the wheat, somebody turns it into flour, somebody then bakes it into bread, a machine that somebody invented, likely it's a robot, puts the bread into a sleeve, it gets put in boxes or on a tray, a driver picks it up, takes it to Kroger, Meijer, you and I go down the block and we pick up a loaf of bread, somebody checks us out maybe, and a bagger puts it in a bag. If you took out one or two of those spots along the way, we don't get our fresh bread. Keller says there is no such thing as I'm just a carpenter. Chuck, I don't relate to significance. I just wear an orange apron at Home Depot. I had a guy say that to me. I said, there's no such thing as There is no such thing. Doesn't matter what you do, who you are. Everybody has a role in the process of what we're all going through. So I encourage you. Doesn't matter who you are, what you've done, what you do, where you're going. Listen for these whispers and nudges. Be encouraged that there are a lot of people around you, and some of them are right in this room today, who will encourage you that you can reinvent, you can rewire. If you want to start a business, you've got a new idea, you've got the new go-go grandparent, why not? Why not? You've got 74 million baby boomers who are all aging through America at the same time. It's like a big bubble in a python. It's like this big lump is moving through the world. 74 million of us. With time and with some money and we also want to change the world. Invent something that appeals to me, I'll buy it. So don't think you cannot rewire or reinvent yourself. I encourage you. It's never too late to be what you wanted to be, and it's never too late to start dreaming again. Dream again. Thanks for having me. Thank you. So I'm going to take a few questions because I know there's a nice lunch for you in a little while. Anybody have any questions? And when you speak loudly so I can hear it. If you liked what I said, that's great. If you don't, it's Marion's fault. Yes.
What travel agency do you work with when you go on these trips?
Yeah, there's a travel agency that has just moved its corporate headquarters to 6 Mile in Hagerty. They're known as CTS, Corporate Travel Services. And they are the ones that have helped me put together our trip to the Holy Land. So we're going in early to mid-November. We're now just exceeding 1 bus. We can go to 2, so we're building a waiting list for the second bus. And they are also the company in America that if you call for these cruises, their team answers the calls. So I've known them for a long time. I trust them. Corporate Travel Services, CTS, Corporate Travel Services. But they don't just do corporate things. They do all kinds of cruises, trips. They'll help you connect with family if people are flying from different parts of the country. They're just awesome. I have no stock in them either. Any other questions, comments about anything? Yes?
You were really outstanding. You gave so much, I couldn't take notes fast enough.
Oh, you're sweet. Thanks.
I think I got it all up here. I really appreciate the idea about the God nudge or God winks, but it takes time for each of us to kind of sit back in the morning or the afternoon, listen to that. So thanks for that encouragement.
Listening is a big thing, right? Because you need quiet time, and sometimes the time is not the same. Our time is not the same. So it's a lesson I've had to learn, be quiet and listen. And so I appreciate that. And thanks for your nice comments. Thank you. There'll be a little something extra in your lunch today. Some extra carrots for that lady. Somebody over there. Yes, ma'am. Yeah, I'm actually not on staff anywhere, so I have been on staff, and I'm not. My last position where I got to know Marion and work with her, I was executive director. So I had said going in that probably would be a season. So that season ended March 1. So I'm right now kind of recrafting. I'm doing a lot of speaking. When I went to halftime, they encourage us to create a personal mission statement. And I think being here fits. Personally, I feel it fits. My personal mission statement is that I want to serve other people and encourage others to serve other people to glorify God's kingdom. That is my mission. So when I get calls today like, hey, let's start a pet food store, it's like, I guess there's something there that matches, but I don't have time. So I really do have a method to what I'm doing in my life. That being said, the listening part is important because God still hasn't said, drive to 6 in Hagerty and dig here and there'll be a bag of money to start this thing. You know, so it's still a journey. But I do a lot of things in and out of churches. I speak. I'm speaking this Saturday morning to a men's group at Highland Park Baptist Church in Southfield. I do I'm a paid speaker. I MC things. So I do that, and travel is important. And then I get to work with groups. For some reason, I'm allowed to get into the doors of places, you know. So it's good. I have a fabric of life that is different. Some days I can be in a church doing something, and some days I can be doing something completely unrelated. I'm emceeing something for the Pope Francis Center in Detroit. They serve the homeless. I've been there. I encourage you. The least of these, it's an amazing place. Anybody that serves the homeless, like you got me at hello, and I've actually helped serve in the morning, and they have maybe one of the coolest statues I've ever seen. It's a homeless person under a blanket. It's a bronze statue on a park bench. And you look, and the person has the blanket over their face. And as you scan down their body, they've got the blanket pulled off their feet, and their 2 feet are pierced. And you realize, well, yeah, it's powerful. So for me, I'm ecumenical. You can throw a party and tell me you got Diet Coke and pita bread. I'll come help you. You know, I'm kind of a cheap date sometimes. Other questions, comments about anything? Yes.
Is there any way we can find out where you will be speaking again
You know, I want to know his name too. What is his excuse that he's not here? Oh, he's golfing? Oh, he's working. Oh, well, okay, that's pretty good.
But he's retired 3 times.
Yeah.
And we're trying to help him find his way.
You know what? Why don't you get the book? Or I'll tell you what, even better. Go to, I have a website. I don't sell anything. Just go to chuckgaidica.com. And I have a connection there. If you look, you can get a halftime book sent to you. It's a paperback version. If you want the hardcover, you go to Amazon. It's like $12, $15. That book may be a good catalyst to start. Yeah, but I encourage you. I don't know. I'm speaking at this men's group in Southfield Saturday. I'm not doing a lot of, I'm doing more and more. I'm speaking, but sometimes it seems to have a focus. So I'm speaking to a bunch of financial planning clients. I'm being hired by people to do some things. So I kind of serve as a consultant in some ways too. So yeah, I do have functionality in my website. I should probably do that to let people know where I am. But I don't really like people. So my wife always hits me. I'll say that. Don't say that. They'll believe it. Yes, sir. Do I do anything? Oh, I have, and there's a great organization that started here in Livonia, Fallen and Wounded Soldiers Fund. For 10 years, I've emceed when they start out real small at Laurel Manor, and now their annual benefit is at, I believe, the MGM Grand. I mean, it's gotten big. And they are extraordinary. They're local. All their money stays in Michigan. I've seen men and women come back with disability, lost an eye, an explosion. They pay all their medical bills. A guy came home, he was in a wheelchair, couldn't get through a small house. The width of the hallways in some of the smaller houses, they blew the walls up. I mean, they literally removed the walls and rebuilt them so he could navigate his entire house. They are an extraordinary group. And then there's one more that I've helped, Metro Airport. We do not have a USO in Detroit at the airport. They have 2 Freedom Centers. There's one in the North Terminal, and there's one in the main terminal, McNamara Terminal. Freedom Center operates on donations. It is a place where if you are a former member of the military, spouse was military or is retired, or your children are military, at both of the airports, they have a center you can go, relax. Let's say your flight's delayed. They've got popcorn, they've got drinks. So it's our version of a USO. Both of those, I would say, register extremely high. And I've been right in seeing who's running them, and I would highly recommend them. Anybody else? Any questions, comments? Somebody else had a hand up. Did I scare you? Don't let us scare because that lady's husband didn't come. I'm not bad. Oh, well, thank you. I miss you too because I used to watch back. Those are nice pajamas. You know what? I did that for 2 years after I left. I didn't think I was coming back, and they asked me, and I also told them I would work on I gave them a 2-year commitment. That came and went. And so I'm not really aching to I may be doing something in radio, maybe soon, I don't know. That's some meetings to happen. And again, with television, they know how they can reach me, but I appreciate your comments. I miss my buddies, being on TV with them, not so much the being on part. But it was a season. It was a great career. And if I can do something there, put me in, Coach. And if not, I got a lot of stuff to do, so it's okay. Yes?
Did you ever meet Sonny Elliott?
Yes. In my, did I ever meet Sonny Elliott? So when I first got to Detroit, when Sonny was let go, he was 65. Basically, he retired from television at that moment. And he was still doing WWJ radio. So WWJ radio was still in the same building as Channel 2 in Southfield for a time. Now J Radio's in Southfield in a different place. And we would have to walk past each other in the hall to get back and forth from the coffee machine. He wouldn't look at me. If he did, it was a mean look. So I think he really kind of blamed me for taking his job. Now, fast forward. We're both private pilots. We're both keeping our little airplanes out at City Airport in a hangar, 2 planes down from each other. We get to know each other and see each other. I invite him to the TV station. We're becoming friendly. He calls me at one point because his partner in the airplane he had passed away. He wanted to know if he could fly my airplane at times because he was going to have to sell his. And then I never heard anything else from him. I think by that time he was well into his 70s and maybe realized he didn't want to fly anymore. And then you fast forward even a little farther, he passed away. And his wife called me and asked if I would speak at his memorial service. So life went full circle. And that's a really good lesson for me personally and a good lesson for all of us, of course, and I don't mean to sound preachy. It was just, sometimes you glimpse in on somebody, you can be critical of a billionaire until 10 years from now that guy donates all of his money to solve some world, health crisis. You could be critical of somebody who's kind of snarly because he thinks you took your job, and then 10, 15 years later, you're chatting on the phone about being pilots and you're asked to speak at his, funeral. Give it time. Give it time. So it was a good lesson in life. So he was actually a very funny guy. His jokes were, well, and that's why he lost his job. Some people liked his jokes and some didn't, Anything else? So here? Yes. Carmen Harlan. Well, and can I tell you that she is one of the sweetest people around. She is, I think she's launching a clothing line. And she's retired from television. They put her on in the parade last year as a co-grand marshal, which if I get the call, if you're watching the parade this year, just it's inside baseball. If I'm not on the street broadcasting, but I've been asked to be co-grand marshal, that's my last year. That's how they do it, like that's the big send-off. So, but they did that last year, and she's enjoying her retired life. Her husband, Andy, is he's one of the few men in the world that I will kiss, just saying. And he kisses back, and he's a good dancer. So she is a sweetheart of a lady. I hope she's enjoying her life. We've chatted every once in a while. And I talked to Mort. My wife and I were down in Florida. Mort Krim retired. He's down there near Jacksonville. And so we stayed at his home. Mort is now early 80s. And I don't know if you know, but my birthday is August 2nd. The reason you may know that is because when I got to Channel 4, I moved from Channel 2 to Channel 4. Mort Krim used to come on the air about a week before his birthday at the end of July, and he would say, "My birthday is coming up," and he would just do that as a joke. So I heard this, and jokingly I said to him during a commercial, I said, Mort, I'm going to start mentioning my birthday so much, August 2nd, that everyone will forget when your birthday comes around. And he doesn't call me Chuck, he calls me Charles. All right, Charles, go ahead. That deep. So that's when it started. So my running gag of telling everybody it was my birthday, and I'd put it up on signs and crawls across the screen, it became a gag with Mort, and then it just stuck. And so I never got any great presents out of it, but he's doing well. So the moral to that story is there is life after TV news, right? Yeah. Anything else? Yes.
Do you have any connection still with Tipping Point?
Tipping Point Theater, yes. I encourage you. It's a small theater in downtown Northville, about 105 seats, not a bad seat in the house. It's professional theater, which for a small place, we've won national awards, even a National Tony Award. So I started out as one of the founding board members. I helped launch the theater. For a time, I was in partnerships. I owned the building. We then sold it back to the nonprofit. I am on the board again. I'm named, what am I? I have a title. I'm chairman emeritus. So that means I don't have to go to every meeting, but I can still come when I want to. And so I help as much as I can. I've come back on the board as a regular board member, not an officer. So I'm still involved. It's art. I think, I believe there's a creator. If you haven't figured that out already, I believe that I love seeing what he's created. And even though sometimes people who do plays and sing songs get a little edgy, I don't like everything that's art. I think art is good for our souls and our community, and so I continue to help support them. Nobody makes any big money there. If you go, it's still affordable, and you can get a nice dinner. So I encourage you, if you want to, 5 plays a year, they do some other things. It's a great little spot right here in our backyard, Any other comments, questions about anything? All right. Extra carrots for that lady. I know I've got to get a picture. I'll be happy to say hi if you have any other personal questions. Thank you so much for allowing me to be with you today.